We're going to talk about Elvis in the 1950s because his meteoric rise is the stuff of legend. His recording career starts in July 1953 when he goes to Sun Records to record the two songs My Happiness and That's When Your Heartaches Begin, supposedly as a very belated birthday present to his mom, even though her birthday was in April, and I don't think the Presleys had a record player at the time, but that is the story, so whatever, we'll go with it. So he records the two tracks, nothing comes of it, but he's on the board. 1953, two songs. He goes back to Sun in January 1954 and records I'll Never Stand in Your Way and It Won't Be the Same Without You, which make a mild impression on the Sun's secretary. Nothing major, but when Sam Phillips is trying to record a song and he's looking for the right vocalist, it's this secretary who kind of nudges him and reminds him of the truck driver kid who could sing a decent ballad. So Sam Phillips calls up Elvis, and the story goes that he ran all the way there. I just picture a little Charlie Bucket with his golden ticket, and he's running all the way home. Run as fast as you can. But they're not able to make it work. Elvis tries a couple of things and they can't get it quite right, so Sam Phillips sends him home, sends him packing. And that's the end of Elvis as we know it, right? So after the session, he's talking with Scotty Moore, and he's saying, like, there's maybe something there if we can get him on the right thing, I don't know. So Sam Phillips links Scotty Moore, Bill Black, and Elvis Presley for a session the following week. So Elvis goes to Scotty's house and with Bill, and they're kind of checking the vibes, they're kicking it a little bit, and it's kind of rough going. They're not like 100% on the same page. It's not like lightning in a bottle immediately or anything, but Sam Phillips gets on the phone and he says, hey boys, how's it going? And they're like, whatever. He says, well, figure it out, because I want you here recording something tomorrow. So they're like, okay, I guess we got to figure this out. And they work through the night, and they pull up to the studio the next day, and they ain't got nothing. They got nothing. They're there to record the tracks Harbor Lights and I Love You Because, which eventually they do. Those both end up on LPs, but it's this goofing, improvised take of That's All Right that they're doing in between takes that Sam Phillips perks his head up at, and he's like, hey, what are you guys doing over there? And they're like, we don't know. And they're kind of just riffing and coming up with something. And Sam's like, well, start it over, find a spot, and let me record the darn thing. And thus they recorded That's All Right. And the rest is history, right? So Sam plays the record over the phone for a local radio DJ, Dewey Phillips. They're not related. And then Dewey Phillips plays the record on the radio, like the next day, July 7th, I want to say. They say that the switchboard lit up like a Christmas tree, and they received so many calls, 40 calls that evening. They played the record back 14 times in a row. Clearly, this was something special happening, and they didn't quite even know what it was yet, because it was like, well, it's not quite this genre, it's not quite this genre. Not to mention that there's now 6,000 advance orders for That's All Right. So the boys know they got to get back in the studio and they got to cut a B-side so they can actually release this dang thing, which turns out to be Blue Moon. So by August, they're a unit. They're the Blue Moon Boys with Scotty and Bill, and now DJ Fontana's on deck, and they got Bob Neal promoting. So they put out another single, which is Good Rockin' Tonight with I Don't Care If the Sun Don't Shine. And they're grinding out all these little tours and show stops. They hit Overton Park, they do an ill-received Grand Ole Opry, and they land a year's engagement on the Louisiana Hayride show doing Saturday nights. So by the end of 1954, they're kind of making a splash. They've only got the 6 songs out, but they're doing okay for themselves, and considering that he started the year just recording random songs at Sun, just kind of throwing stuff at a wall, not doing anything, and by the end of this year, he's got a band, he's got some songs that are charting locally, and he's got a year's engagement, so not a bad way to close out 1954. And so with his foot in the door, Elvis spends 1955 just grinding. Like, in January, he releases the single Milk Cow Blues with You're a Heartbreaker. He formalizes management with Bob Neal. And most importantly, he meets the infamous Colonel Tom Parker. Bob Neal considered Tom to be the best promoter in the music business, and he was managing Eddie Arnold and currently Hank Snow. And so Bob Neal is able to use that, leverage that to get Elvis opening for Hank Snow's February tour. April sees the release of Baby Let's Play House and I'm Left, You're Right, She's Gone. And in August, Elvis appoints Tom Parker as his special advisor, whatever that means. August also brought the single I Forgot to Remember to Forget and Mystery Train. So yeah, Elvis's stock is just rising at this point. He keeps touring and he's doing these shows. He opened for the Comets a couple of times, and Bill Haley gave him the advice to stop or to sing less ballads, which I find kind of interesting. So then there's a bidding war that breaks out between the labels, partially after Elvis wins Most Promising Male Artist at the November Country DJ convention, but I mean in general he's just they see the talent in the water, you know. So they're all bidding for him. RCA of course wins out with a staggering $40,000 contract, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that is the most that anybody had been paid at that point for a record deal. So, pretty big thing. Once Elvis is on the major, it's a completely different ballgame after this, as you'll see in the following year. But even in December, because the deal also gave RCA access to all the Sun records, they just start re-releasing those records on a national scale, and they just start doing numbers. And they didn't have to do anything. They just sat back and just re-released work that other people did. You know what I mean? So 1955 closes with 6 new Elvis songs, and with the newfound backing of a major label, the future looks very, very bright. And then, it's like, you know, if all the other years are not spectacular, if they are par for the course, if they are what you might expect from an artist who's just on the come up, you know, like, oh, they put out some singles and they did some numbers, they got a record deal, they're doing pretty good. Like, what's so crazy about that? 1956 throws all that out the window. That's all gone now. 1956 is Elvis's year. There's that saying, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. But in 1956, there's maybe no one more talented and more hardworking than Elvis. And his hard work pays off to an unprecedented degree, as you will see. 10 days into the new year, he's already at RCA and he's cutting records, and it's a whole different experience for him. I read that they were talking about how the environment just feels much more corporate and business-like, and back at Sun, they would all just be eating sandwiches in the booth, and then while they're at RCA now, it's more like, yes, we're going to record this, and it's going to be catalog number 4831B, and after that, we're going to move into 40, blah, blah, blah. So there's a whole different vibe and everything, but Elvis is here for it. He's game. So from these early sessions come the single Heartbreak Hotel and I Was the One, which... big deal, big deal. So the single releases January 27th, and on January 28th, he has his television debut on The Dorsey Show. He's not permitted to do Heartbreak Hotel for some reason. I think they just thought it was kind of dour and lame, and it's personally not my favorite song, but that's okay. And so he goes on The Dorsey Show 3 more times in February, but all the while, RCA is still re-releasing all those old tracks, and so their re-release of I Forgot to Remember to Forget goes number 1 on the country charts. It's his first number 1, and meanwhile, Heartbreak Hotel is still steadily climbing. February also sees Tom Parker instated as Elvis's official manager. Bob Neal is out, and that's it forever now. And then it does not take but another month. The earth shakes, it quakes when Elvis releases his debut LP, Elvis Presley. More new tracks all at once than you've ever gotten from Elvis at this point. And, let's stop down and talk about this record for a second, right? When I first reviewed it, I gave it a B because I think they were still kind of figuring out what Elvis's sound was going to be, and all of the things that he was pioneering with those early tracks would get more polished as he would go along. And so certainly there are people who are going to say that they like that there's these kind of rougher rockabilly tracks on there, and there's a couple of like slow, in my opinion, meandering ballads on there. It is kind of this weird hodgepodge, rough around the edges thing, which I think has as much going for it as it has against it. Me personally, I am more of a fan of a cohesive body of work, and because I am less of a fan of those ballad tracks and less of a fan of the rockabilly, I still feel like this is a B-tier album for me personally. And if I were to put it into the ranking here, how I rank Elvis's 9 50s LPs, I would slot it probably right here at number 5. But regardless of what I think, the record goes number 1 for an unprecedented 10 weeks. While he's off promoting this juggernaut of a record, he's able to squeeze in a screen test for the Paramount movie The Rainmaker, that being the Burt Lancaster one and not the Matt Damon one. The screen test is ultimately unsuccessful, but it gives him enough motion that a month later he's able to sign a 7-year deal with our Paramount friend Hal Wallace, which is not exclusive to Paramount, which is actually a pretty dang good deal. Heartbreak Hotel goes number 1 in April, continuing on with our streak. That's just going to be basically unstoppable for some time now. May brings I Want You, I Need You, I Love You, and My Baby Left Me, but it's July's batch of tracks that really go crazy, those being Don't Be Cruel and Hound Dog. Notably, Don't Be Cruel is the first song from publishers Hill and Range, and to my ears, this track is a bit different than his repertoire thus far. It's a little more melodic and a little poppier, a little more gentle. So, you know, it does kind of mark that there were the times they are a-changing. He starts filming for his first movie, Love Me Tender, in August and wraps in September, right around the release of the singles Lottie Miss Claudie and Shake, Rattle, and Roll, which Bangers. And then on September 9th, Elvis makes his first of 3 appearances on the Ed Sullivan Show for an absolutely staggering, again record-breaking $50,000 for these 3 appearances. He's getting paid more for these 3 appearances than his entire record deal was worth, which is insane. But while he's on the Ed Sullivan Show, he debuts his forthcoming single, Love Me Tender, which prompts another record-breaking 1 million advance orders, which is just a little bit different from that 6,000 for That's Alright only 2 years ago. So then Love Me Tender and Any Way You Want Me, That's How I Will Be release the next week, and they debut at number 2. I read something that said it's the first single to ever debut at number 2. That seems like a strange thing, but if anybody did it, it's Elvis, I'm sure. And Love Me Tender will eventually go to number 1 when the movie comes out in a couple of months. But before that, before Love Me Tender, this thing he's promoting is this other little thing, his second full-length LP, Elvis, which, let's stop down here for a second. I think this record is amazing. This record, more than his first record, like, this is the record that made me kind of be like, okay, all right, you know, like, I could be down with this, because, like I said, with the first record, there was a little bit more of that rockabilly, and there were tracks that, like, some of them were pulled from the Sun records, some of them were new recordings for RCA. I felt like the tracks were just a lot more cohesive in sound and style on this second record. I thought they went over a lot better. I mean, you got Love Me on there. That track is insane. When I first reviewed this album, I gave it an A. I would again give it an A, and if I had to place it in our ranking of these 9 albums, I'm going to put it at number 3. We're putting it at number 3. Okay? You got a problem? You with me so far? So the album comes out, it goes number 1 again, and then 2 weeks later, the Love Me Tender EP comes out, and that's when the title track goes number 1. Then a week later, the movie comes out, does like a $500,000 in the first week. It goes to number 2 at the box office, right behind Giant, the George Stevens James Dean movie, which is crazy. I still have yet to see a James Dean movie, so I really got to get on that. But that one's like 3 hours long, so I don't know about that. And then to top it all off, after that crazy, frantic run right there, Elvis swings by Sun Records in December and has a jam session with the talent there in this little-known collaboration known as the $1 Million Quartet. Of course, this isn't heard by anybody until like the 80s, I think, or something like that. But having heard it, of course, and just knowing that's where the sessions are from, in this timeline, I think it really squares Elvis as just like still like a very grounded, young, humble dude who just likes music and likes entertaining people, and like, I respect it. I respect it. So this year, 1956, netted Elvis $22 million from merchandise alone, excluding anything that he's making from music. He has more top 100 songs than any other artist in history already, and he is responsible for over 50% of RCA's singles sales. That's crazy. And so between his singles, his EPs, his LPs, 1956 brings us a crazy jump. We're going up to 37 new songs to Elvis fans and a movie. There's simply no roadmap for what the future holds here at the end of 1956. So I said 1956 was Elvis's year. 1957 is Elvis's year. He just continues to step up to the plate and meet the moment and just knock it out of the park for a year straight again. 4 days into the new year, he releases a single, Too Much and Playing for Keeps, the latter of which I think is a really, really pretty melodic little ballad type thing. And then he's off recording and filming for Loving You until March. And I guess upon finishing the movie and the soundtrack, like, it's still in the cut, they didn't release it yet, but just at that moment where it was done, Elvis was feeling pretty okay financially, because it's at this point that he decides to purchase Graceland for $102.5 thousand. And then, you know, 3 days later, so maybe after signing the dotted lines, he took a little look at his bank account and it was a little lower than he wanted to. So they put out a little single and it's All Shook Up, and that's when your heartaches begin. April sees the release of Peace in the Valley, which is like this curious little departure. I only know those songs having heard them first at the end of the Christmas album. And so to realize that it was actually a little separate, dedicated little endeavor just kind of is interesting to me, but I can't say much about it. I don't know the process of the recording, and these songs are vocally pretty good, and actually maybe some of the better ones on the B-side of the Christmas album, in my opinion, but that's all I got for that. Also in April, though, is another fateful meeting of the minds between Elvis and the songwriters Lieber and Stoller. They're contracted to work on Jailhouse Rock, but I guess the story goes that they showed up and they didn't have anything written, which seems kind of unprofessional because like Elvis, they'd already been writing songs for folks in the past, like Big Mama Thornton and the Coasters or the Drifters, I think. So like they're working. I don't know why they showed up apparently with no songs, but then whoever was in charge, Tom Parker or somebody, was like, God damn it, and locked him in a room and said, you're not leaving until you come out of here with some songs. And then they came out and they said, all right, well, we got some songs here. We got one called Jailhouse Rock. We got this, you know what I mean? So did they really not have any material or were they just playing a little jokes? I don't know. Maybe they wrote the songs in one day. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. They're really good songs in any case. And filming and recording takes from May to June. But then when that's wrapped, they have to do the rollout for Loving You because that still hasn't come out yet. The single Let Me Be Your Teddy Bear and Lovin' You comes out June 11th. And then the soundtrack LP comes out the following week. And it goes number 1. And so we'll stop down and we'll talk about this record for a second. But I mean, I think this is a really kind of slept on record, maybe. I guess I don't know what the reputation of it is, but I think it's quite good. It's got the track Lonesome Cowboy on there. It's got a lot of like hard rockin' tracks on it. And then it's got like the cute melodic tracks. A couple of the biggest duds, like I kind of feel like Party and Hot Dog are just kind of scant. They're kind of silly. They don't do a ton for me, but I mean, for every one of those, then you get like a Blueberry Hill. So I think it's a pretty dang good record. I actually think it's, in my opinion, I go to it more often than I go to his debut record. I know that's scandalous, but it is the case. In fact, I'm going to rank this album right in between our two here at number 4. The movie itself releases July 30th and makes like $4 million at the box office. And I remember when I watched it, I was pleasantly surprised by Elvis's prowess. I mean, he wasn't overly stiff or anything. And you know, it's a nice, bright Technicolor movie. I mean, it's like a harmless little B movie, right? You know, it's you go in not expecting much and you come away like, okay, yeah, that wasn't that bad. You know, like Elvis wasn't too bad. The little plot I remember of Glinda, the manager / the Good Witch, and Hank, or was that his name? Hank. Tex, that's his name. Tex. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, no, that was an okay movie. That was okay. I remember thinking that was okay, and I was like, all right, if this is what it's going to be, maybe I'll be okay with this, you know? And then with Lovin' You out of the way, we can move on and start rolling out for Jailhouse Rock, right? Wrong. Wrong. We put out the single, we put out Jailhouse Rock and Treat Me Nice in September, but then October 15th, Elvis switches it all up, and he puts out his Christmas album, which, of course, goes number 1. Kind of seems like it throws a wrench in the promotion of Jailhouse Rock, but Elvis doesn't really need it, obviously. I mean, so the Christmas album goes number 1, and then 2 weeks later on October 30th, the Jailhouse Rock EP comes out, and then, of course, 1 week later, the film comes out, and it does numbers, so nobody's hurting there. Regarding the Christmas album, I reviewed it when I listened to it. I hadn't even heard Lovin' You at the time that I heard the Christmas album, because I hadn't even factored in the soundtrack albums in the timeline, you know? Because I was a fool. It's still at the bottom of the list, okay? I'm just gonna start here. It's at number 9. It's number 9, okay? Is anybody surprised by that? I was probably too harsh in giving it a D. I think basically all of the critiques that I said, I stand by, but it's raised in my esteem to at least a C. It's effective in what it does. And like I said, those last 4 tracks, which now I know are from the Peace in the Valley EP, I think he demonstrates a lot of vocal range. There are a couple of tracks, like the opening track on the A side and Blue Christmas, that are just nice and bluesy and kind of fun. And then, you know, there are the traditional songs, the O Bethlehems and stuff like that, but those don't really do it for me. And everybody, I remember when I put out that review, and then everybody got all mad at me in the comments, and they were all like, what were you expecting? It's a freaking Christmas album. What were you expecting? And then we recently listened to his Christmas album from 1971, and it was amazing. And so now I feel even more vindicated. I'm like, that's what I wanted. I wanted that. What were you expecting? I was expecting that. I know that that's not how it quite works, but I'm not going to harp on it. It's not my favorite, but it's fine. I don't really care for it. It's a C tier album for me now, and it's at number 9. As far as Jailhouse Rock, I mean, I've done an entire review of it, but I think it's pretty good. I think it's quite funny. I think Elvis is funny as he's a jerk. He's an ex-con, and he's he's sassy and blah 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 blah, and I'll never not laugh at him on that couch when they're all like, oh, I just think this new record is going to space. What about you, son? And he looks and he's like, lady, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And then he just storms out of the house. Like, that cracks me up. I think it's, up to this point, easily his best movie. The music on it is kicking, of course. Jailhouse Rock is a classic. The scene in the film where they are doing it, and it's, you know, he's jumping on the tables and swinging down the poles, and the guys have the stencils, I guess, the cardboard stencils of the instruments. Like, I think that's all really great. Iconic piece of cinema in a more or less kind of lackluster film. By the end of it, it just kind of like abandons its own premise and just kind of goes, yeah, whatever, he's some Elvis songs, whatever. It's a fun movie. He's had 2 movies back to back that are fun. You know, you go see him, you get some music, you get to see Elvis shirtless in this one. Pretty good. Pretty good. And so all seems hunky-dory for Elvis. It seems like he's had another freaking banger year and he's just gonna keep doing his thing, but then he goes home for Christmas to Graceland and he receives his draft notice, which effectively, however you want to look at it, for better or for worse, depending on how you feel about the guy, it effectively changes the course of American popular music. I don't think I'm being hyperbolic in saying that, considering the effect that he was having on the culture at the time. I don't think that's an exaggeration. And part of it is that he decides, or maybe is advised by Tom Parker and such, not to seek any special treatment. He's not going to go entertain the troops and keep singing songs and stuff like that. He just wants to be a regular G.I. Joe and perform his duty, right? Which is super admirable, super cool. Dude had some brass ones to be like, yeah, I'm going to go in the Army. I made $22 million last year off of just my merch. I'm sure I could get some dude to write I have bone spurs or something like that and I'd be fine. But instead, he served his term. He went there. The only accommodation that he seeks is for a deferment in order to finish the film that he's working on, a little-known film named King Creole. So he's granted this small silver lining, and he wraps the year, albeit future-looking uncertain, but he wraps the year with 33 new songs for fans and 2 new movies. So, like, maybe his most prolific year. But from here, things start to wane. I actually didn't even realize or process how quickly Elvis goes into the Army in the year 1958 because of how much work that he was able to accomplish in advance. As has become tradition, he releases a January single, this being Don't and I Beg of You. And Don't is his 10th #1 track, which is also written by Lieber and Stoller, and is a good track, you know. It's soft and understated and stuff like that. But from January to March, he's doing nothing but recording songs and filming for King Creole. That's it, because whatever he can't get done, or whatever he can get done, is all he's going to have for the foreseeable future. And meanwhile, RCA is preparing the release of Elvis's Golden Records, which is the first rock and roll greatest hits album ever, because nobody else could ever do such a thing. And they want it to coincide with his official induction into the Army in March. And the record does numbers, I'm sure, and probably went #1 again, but the main thing is just the phenomenon at that time. It's got to be a little bit uneasy. It's got to feel a little bit uncomfortable hanging around the RCA offices at that time. This album, because I hadn't listened to any of his singles, I was just going through the LPs. This was the first time that I heard so many of these tracks. This was the first time that I actually heard Jailhouse Rock was on this record. This was the first time I heard Hound Dog. You know, there's amazing seminal classics on this record. And there's 14 tracks, so it's a little bit longer, which also leaves a little bit of room for more filler. But if you're looking for bang for your buck, can you do any better than Golden Records 1 in the 1950s? Hard to say. It's close. I'm really close. I'm between a couple spots here because it's the longest, so you get the most tracks and there's a through line of goodness to them. But then also there are tracks that I just don't listen to on this thing, you know, like the ballads on here. I just don't, or even Heartbreak Hotel. I don't really like that song altogether that much. I'm sorry. So, is it #1? Is it #1? I don't even know. Why didn't I decide this before I started recording? I mean, I'm going on my favorites, right? I gotta stay true to my heart. The truth is that my heart is telling me one thing and my mind is telling me another thing. My heart is telling me that Golden Records is number 2. My mind is telling me that it's number 1. Because how could it not be? It's all these records. It's right? But my heart says, if I'm sitting there on a desert island, or if I'm in my car and I'm looking to throw on a record, I do tend to go with the other one as number 1. So this would be number 2. It doesn't feel right to say that. It doesn't feel right. Elvis's Golden Records, in the decade of 1950s, I'm ranking it number 2. So April kind of curiously brings about the singles Wear My Ring Around Your Neck and Don't You Think It's Time, which I say is weird because they aren't King Creole affiliated. And these are the last things before the movie is released. And like previously with Lovin' You, you had the LP or even the EP for Love Me Tender come out a week prior to the film's release. But in this case, they did it slightly differently, where they had the King Creole LP split into 2 EPs and released 2 and 4 weeks after the film. I reckon this was a way to maintain buzz for a little bit longer, you know? It's like the difference between dropping a whole show on Netflix and then you binge it in a weekend and then it's out of your head by Monday. Whereas otherwise you have a show come out weekly and then you're talking about it for like 2 months or something like that, you know? I think that's what they were kind of going for, but I don't know. So the movie releases July 2nd and makes a couple million, and then EP 1 comes July 15th and EP 2 comes July 29th. And so like I said, it's kind of like now all of July is dedicated to King Creole coverage, you know what I mean? I also have to point out that between the singles that are released and these EPs that come out, the only track from the LP that has not been released, the only one you're buying that LP for, is Steadfast, Loyal, and True. They left that out of singles because they know that song sucks. And to this day, I don't know why it's in the film. Who did that? Whose decision was this? And I will say, as far as the 50s go, King Creole is far and away my favorite Elvis movie. I did a kind of lengthy review of that. It was like an hour long. I think it's competently acted. It's well directed. There's a nice sense of atmosphere. I think the casting is particularly strong with Walter Matthau, Elvis, and I'm blanking on her name, Ronnie's name, character. Carolyn Jones, is that it? I shouldn't mess you up. You deserve the respect. You're freaking Morticia Addams. Yeah, I think that their dynamics were great. I think that it's a very well constructed movie. It sets itself far and apart away from Jailhouse Rock and Love Me Tender and Lovin' You. I think it's superb. The King Creole soundtrack is amazing. It's jazzy, it's bluesy, it's beautiful. Crawfish is sexy. Trouble is rambunctious. There's some good melodies, there's some good slow jams, there's some good everything on there. It's a great record. I put it at my number 1. It's my favorite. There you go. Number 1. But the festivities and the celebrations are over pretty quick because Elvis gets word that his mother Gladys has fallen ill. And so he's granted medical leave to go see her back home in Graceland in August 1958. And they are able to say their goodbyes, I should hope, because 2 days later, she passes away. That's a really terrible thing. She was very, very young. I think I had read that she was in her early to mid 40s. It's one thing because when I initially had heard that Elvis's mother passed away while he was in the service, I thought it was literally like he was overseas when it happened. And so I am very thankful, or I mean, I don't know why I'm saying I'm thankful, like I know the person, but you know what I mean? Like, for as much pain and heartache as he was no doubt feeling in those moments, I'm sure that it would have been so much worse if he hadn't been able to say his goodbyes to his mother, you know? So for what it's worth, you know, I'm glad that they did get to do that. And life is kind of strange because then in September of 1958, he goes back to the army and he goes back overseas and he meets Priscilla at a party in Germany. And I know a bunch of you just groaned and rolled your eyes or whatever. And regardless of your personal feelings about Priscilla or my, for example, personal feelings about their age gap at the time, you have to acknowledge, you have to be a little bit human and empathetic in these moments and acknowledge that at this moment, he's just lost his mother, the center of his world, and he's hurting, he's reeling and in pain. And just the fact that something as characteristically sweet as a romance could blossom in the wake of this tragedy. Like, I know that they're an age difference and he's creepy and she's a or whatever. I know all that. I'm not trying to condone any shady stuff, but I'm just saying, you know, that he's hurting, and to have someone there to console him and to help him through those times, I think is absolutely crucial. I think it's what any person needs when they're suffering, and I wouldn't wish him that suffering alone, you know, like he's so far from home, and I'm just glad that he had somebody. Sue me. Okay? And the year kind of starts winding down after that summer and after her passing. One Night and I Got Stung released in October, and there's this strange little EP called Elvis Sales that came out in November, and it's apparently a compilation of interviews. It's like 10 minutes in length. I haven't heard it, but I want to check it out now. But that's about it. It's a far cry from the whirlwind successes and record-breaking smashes of his previous 2 years, but compared to 1959, or even anybody's 1958 who isn't named Elvis Presley, is a damn good year. Most people would kill for it. So he ends the year having released 17 new songs and 1 movie. And the 1959 is a big ol' oof. With Elvis overseas, RCA's kind of working overtime to keep his name and his music in people's minds, which I guess isn't hard to do, but that's the job of the label, right? So, and kudos to them because they fooled the casual Elvis fan in me. Like I said, I'd only been listening to his music in LPs, and so all of the old Sun singles and anything that might have been tucked away on like a little EP, I hadn't heard any of it. And so, like I said, with the Golden Records, you know, those are all tracks that fans knew, but like Jailhouse Rock and Hound Dog and stuff, they're some of those all these #1 singles, and I hadn't heard any of them. And that's exactly what happens here with 3 1959 LPs that we get. And so you get For LP Fans Only in February, A Date with Elvis in July, and then 50 Million Elvis Fans Can't Be Wrong in November. So pretty well spaced out. And then in the middle, you get Now and Then There's a Fool Such as I and I Need Your Love Tonight in March, and then A Big Hunk of Love and My Wish Came True in June. And let me tell you something, if you consume music like me, like if you somehow only experienced these records similarly to how I did, you'd be like, man, 1959 is a banger year for Elvis. A banger year. Like, he came out with 3 full-length LPs and a couple of singles. Like, that's better than your favorite artist's best year of their career. And this is a downer year for Elvis, you know what I mean? But the reality is that most people were definitely not listening to music like how I am or was with the LP only thing. Like, I think any Elvis fan worth their weight would have known at least some of the songs that are being released on these 3 LPs, if not all of them, you know, and they would have had them as singles from their original releases or re-releases or on EPs or whatever, because all these songs are packaged a million times over, you know what I mean? So if you are a diehard Elvis fan in the year 1959, the only songs that you're getting that are new are the singles. You're getting a total of 4 new songs in the year 1959, down from like 17 and 30 something, and obviously you're not getting any movies or anything like that. So as a fan, as an executive, and as an artist, as Elvis, who's sitting there in Germany taking amphetamines and all this stuff, like, I'm sure he would rather be cutting music and entertaining people and stuff like that. Like, it's got to be a really scary spot to be in. So, like, I'm not sure when exactly news broke that Elvis was going to be coming back in the year 1960. I'm not sure when that news reached folks, but until that day came, I would be incredibly worried if I was an Elvis fan. Like, I would just be like, oh, the world's moving on without him. The times are changing. Maybe he's changing. Maybe he's going to come back and he's just going to want to sing Wooden Heart and he's just going to want to dance with puppets. That's a joke. So then these last 3 spots are reserved for these 3 LPs. And I'm going to be 100% honest. I'm more or less roughly interchangeable with these. The basic vibe that I'm going to say is that For LP Fans and A Date with Elvis feel very much like companion pieces because the majority of those are those older Sun records, so there is a lot of that more country, rockabilly type stuff with the rougher recordings. His vocals are just different, just processed differently, just they sound different. And of those 2, For LP Fans Only, I think is slightly stronger. I really like his Shake, Rattle, and Roll. I think Lottie Miss Claudia is good. Mystery Train is good. For some reason, I'm quite a fan of his Poor Boy. Because I keep saying, like, I'm not as big a fan of the country rockabilly stuff, but then he has a song, on this one he has Poor Boy, and on the other one he has We're Gonna Move to a Better Home, or There's a Leak, whatever it's actually called. And like that's like the most country of them maybe, and I really like that song a lot. So I don't exactly know. I don't have a very consistent critique to lay out, but I'm human. And I Was the One is also a really good ballad off of LP Fans Only. That one is my favorite of these three. So we're gonna slot this one in at number 6, and we're going to give this album a B. I think it is quite good. I think it's got a good mix of stuff. But on this record, there's not really like a go-to track for me, which is kind of a thing. There's not like that big standout. There's not like Love Me or Trying to Get to You or Jailhouse Rock or Hound Dog or anything like that, or Lonesome Cowboy. The closest for me, I guess, is the Shake, Rattle, and Roll, because I really think that's amazing. Just how aggressive he is on there. And conversely, the ballad I Was the One is maybe the strongest there in my opinion. But there's still just not that one that really gets me, but it's a very consistent record. I do enjoy it. It's not the most appealing to me just because it is more steeped in that country and rockabilly, but put it in spot number 6. Very respectable number 6, okay? Something has to be at the bottom here, you know? Like, I'm not saying any of these are bad, even the Christmas album. Then we're between A Date with Elvis and 50 Million Elvis Fans Can't Be Wrong, and for my money, I think 50 Million Elvis Fans is just slightly superior. So we are going to put that at the top there, and then we're going to put the other one right below it. Now, you know, there's the list. But I think I just prefer this one basically due to the styles that it's trying to pull from and stuff. So again, A Date with Elvis is some of those older tracks. They're scratchier, they're country, they're rockabilly. And then 50 Million Elvis Fans is newer. It's a little more polished. The recordings are a little stronger, I feel like. You've got these kind of funky, weird rhythms, and like I Got Stung. Yeah, there's again, there's a couple tracks that don't do a ton for me. My Wish Came True I find to be a slightly disappointing one, although they do have those kind of ghostly wails going there that I think are cool. One Night, he's just got this like rough, gritty delivery to it. Am I holding this mic in front of my face the whole time? Yeah, Don't is really good. Wear My Ring Around Your Neck is really catchy. Don't You Think It's Time has this weird delivery, like the flow on the verses is really strange. I like that one. I like this record quite a bit. I especially think that it starts kind of picking up steam towards that back half. I think that that's a little bit stronger than the A side, but it's fun. And then A Date with Elvis is our second lowest here, only above the Christmas album, which, you know, makes it look like I don't like this album, but that's not the case. I mean, we're going from A+ to C. Like, it's not a very drastic difference between these guys. We're still, all of these albums are just in the B tier. You know what I mean? It's kind of just take your pick. You do get the Jailhouse Rock songs on here as well, without Jailhouse Rock, which is, you know, I mean, you get I Wanna Be Free, which is a beautiful song, but yeah, it's just, it's probably my least favorite collection of tracks here. But the thing that's cool is that my list could be completely flipped for just as valid reasons. Like, you could have somebody saying, well, I'm a devout Christian or Catholic and I love Christmas music or whatever, or you just like that it's down tempo and soft, and that's fine. And then you could say, and I really like the country rockabilly stuff. So yeah, give me all of these old Sun records. That's all of my favorite stuff. And then I'm not as much a fan of the jazz and the blues. So King Creole is actually my least favorite. Like, you could completely have that argument. You know what I mean? When you have someone as versatile as Elvis, you're going to have pockets of fandom, you know? So this is my list. I mean, it's not right or wrong. Unless you say it's wrong, then it's wrong. I think it's right, because it's my list. And in any case, I mean, just this stack of albums for the year from the years that we've talked about, from the back half of the 1950s, is absolutely incredible, earth-shattering stuff. And it's just so wild that we start this decade, nobody knows who the he is. He's just this kid who graduates high school, and then by the end of it, or by like the thick of it, he's the biggest star on the face of the planet. He's completely inescapable, and then he's whisked away at the height of it, you know? And like, we have begun to explore his 1960s trajectory, so fortunately, I know at this moment that he does in fact come back home safe and sound, and then he kind of hits the ground running. Spoilers. But like, to be closing out 1959 and to not be sure what the future holds for his music, man, that'd be a really, really tough spot to be in. And the only solace you'd be able to take would be to take one of these 9 records, or maybe all of them, pull it out of the sleeve, put it on your RCA Victor machine, and have a grand time. There used to be like the stereotype, I think it's kind of eroded nowadays, but you used to have this notion of like a very stoic and like distant father figure who would come home and then like pour some scotch and then go into the records room, and he'd close the door, and he wasn't to be disturbed in there because he's just in there drinking his scotch and smoking cigars and listening to music, you know? And if these are the albums that he's in there listening to, smoking his cigars, I can't say I blame him. I can see it. Just be like, get the damn kids out of here, Janet. I'm trying to listen to Milk Cow Blues Boogie. That's all I got, folks.